You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
All right, folks, we're talking about Seattle Police Department again. What do you think the topic might be? We haven't had a ton of the peaceful protesting that have devolved into the violent riots. Haven't had a ton of that lately, so can't give you any juicy deets there. But the ongoing story about the number of police officers no longer on the streets of Seattle. Yeah, I've been talking about that for a long time, and so have a bunch of other people. Not a bunch, a couple in Seattle media. This story isn't getting better. It is getting worse. And I think this summer you're going to see some pretty major coverage because it's kind of unavoidable. You've defunded a portion of the Seattle Police Department, took a bunch of cops off the street, made it untenable for police officers to want to work as police officers in Seattle and a lot of other cities. They're quitting in droves. And now interim police chief Adrian Diaz, he says Seattle Police Department is experiencing an staffing crisis. We've got a staffing crisis. Police officers, we've got a homelessness crisis. We've got an opioid crisis. We've just got crises coming out the rear end, don't we? We do. Seattle does. Maybe your town doesn't. And maybe that's why you tune into the Seattle Real Estate Podcast, because we're covering so many topics that are crises. We just got crises left and right here. Man, it's crazy. But this story is one of those, well, what did you think would happen? Seriously, what did you think would happen when you take a whole bunch of cops off the street, or you make it so that they don't want to do their job? Yeah, I'm ready to retire. think I'm going to burn out my sick leave. I'm going to retire. You can't blame them at all. And then what's going to happen when you don't have enough cops on the street? They're going to respond to the calls that are highest priority calls, right? And everybody else, well, you're on your own. Good luck with that. Car got stolen. Okay. Well, hope you find it. Store got broken into. All right. Yeah. Sorry. If you're not bleeding, we don't have the staffing to help you. The public at some point in time is going to go, that was a terrible idea, letting all these police officers go. We need to recruit some more officers. Why aren't our streets safe? Why aren't our streets safe? That is literally the narrative that will come up this summer, right? Right? I think it will. And people will be like, I am shocked the police are not doing their job. Really? Because if you've been following this storyline, you wouldn't be shocked at all. You'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, man, if I was a cop, I wouldn't be a cop. And when I started covering the CHOP last summer, that's when I saw the way people treat, especially the activists, the peaceful protesters, when I saw the way that they interact with the police. I haven't had much experience with the police for like 30 years. And that's a good thing because, it's rumored that before marijuana was legal, it was illegal. And you could go to King County lockup for a night for a small, unspecified amount of what would purportedly be marijuana. That could happen to you. And if it did, you could end up in a holding cell with a neo-Nazi with some crazy stuff tattooed on his knuckles. That could happen to you. And that's not exactly a great experience to have with the police. So I kind of, think that leaving those experiences behind is probably your best bet. And of course, I'm not talking from personal experience here, but that could happen. And in that case, you might have a bad, vibe with the police. Understand that. But for the most part, my adult life, it's been, we need police because kind of want to be safe. Who do you call? When you got something bad going sideways in your life, you call 911 and they get Johnny, police on the spot, right? Or they should. Now we've got a staffing crisis, and that's, it's going to be problematic because our crime is going up. It's not like the crime is leveled out or dropped. It's going up. All right. That's my long intro. That's like a 4.5 minute intro. That's what we're talking about today. If you're new here, my name is Sean Reynolds. I own a couple of real estate companies. Why wouldn't I talk about law enforcement? I mean, King James, he gets to talk about anything he wants and people listen. Joe Rogan talks about, vaccines and that kind of thing. I'm a real estate guy. I'm going to talk about law enforcement because I think that's important. And that's what we're doing. Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Okay, let's get into this one. I'm going to read this article, and then I've also got some information from an actual police officer who is now retired. And like all of those stories, I've got some email from him, and I'm going to read it. And on all my stories, you are anonymous unless you tell me you are dying to have your name read on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. And so far, I haven't really had anybody do that, because guess what? Stuff we talk about here, major media. Oh, that is off limits. We shouldn't be talking about that. That's not in the mainstream media, line of thought here. You guys, what are you doing? Acting Seattle Police Department Chief Adrian Diaz told KOMO News Tuesday that his department is experiencing a staffing crisis as it looks to fill vacant positions that have resulted from officers leaving their agency to pursue jobs with other agencies. Shocking. I know, right? Going back to the way the cops were treated at CHOP, it's bad. And my whole point to that is I came back as a 51-year-old adult, and it's like, holy smokes, these people absolutely hate the cops. And for the cops to take this kind of beat down, that is not how my parents told me to, react to the police. That's a hard no-go for me. So unless you've been on the front lines of some of these protests, you won't really know what I'm talking about, but it is some nasty, nasty stuff. I wouldn't be a cop. You couldn't pay me enough. It's like, oh, geez, no, I can't go to work today. Somebody's going to say something really mean to me again, and I'm just going to crumble. That's where I'd be at. I'd take some, harsh hits here on YouTube. Those are bad enough, but that's not some, knucklehead sitting 5 feet away from me telling me to die or telling me he hopes my kids die. That's the kind of stuff that goes on the daily with these jokers out there doing the protests. According to new data, the agency has shed roughly 200 in-service officers since the beginning of 2019, but Diaz said that they currently have 1,080 officers ready to deploy. Okay, we got 1,080. We need like 1,400. We're shy. We're way shy. So I think last year, 2020, I think officially it was like 180 and change. And this year so far, it's like 60 something. I think it's in the story, but for January, February, March, call it, a good portion of April here, 4 months, we've already had another 60 go. Ooh, we'll be under 1,000 here pretty soon. Diaz, who was tapped to fill the role after former Chief Carmen retired suddenly last summer, said current staffing levels don't allow for an adequate response to 911 calls. This has been in the media a bunch. Are people listening to it? No. Why? Because they don't want to. That's somebody else's problem. Until it's their problem and they need to call 911 because something traumatic is happening to them. And then they're like, oh, where are the police? Why aren't there police? Oh, you defunded them. You treated them terribly. City leadership didn't support them at all. They all quit. Where did they go? Well, I've done podcasts on that. You can check those out. See where cops are going. It's not Seattle, and I'll give you a hint. It's not Portland either. Diaz, all right, at this staffing level, no, he said, we are struggling to make sure that we're responding to all calls for service. Read between the lines. They are not responding. They're not able to respond to all calls. Not happening. Just don't have the manpower to do it. Has Seattle ever been this low on cops? I think before 1990 was when it was this low and our population was way less. So this is the first time in like 30 plus years we've been at this level of police. But we've got way higher crime now, and crime that is not on the decline. It is going the wrong way, upwards that is. Diaz said weekly they have to shift their response to only priority 911 calls. All right, get that? Priority 911 calls. People calling 911 for non-priority issues are usually referenced to online assistance. All right, check out this website. Okay. That's what we're doing. That is what the police are able to do in Seattle right now. That is what they have the manpower for. I throw out there, hey, if the city council wants to defund them and abolish them, let's see what that looks like. And you know how you know that is not where things really are going to head is when the mayor says, oh, yeah, no. And this is a mayor that is not going to be, she's not up for re-election. When the mayor is consistently saying, defunding the police, no. Getting rid of officers, nope. Because she knows that it's on her tenure that if you have a shortage of cops, this is not brain surgery, people, to figure out. It's just not. You don't have enough cops on the streets? Something bad happens to you, you're on your own. Good luck with that. During a divisive battle over the department's spending, the Seattle City Council voted to defund the police budget by roughly 17% in 2021. Nice job, City of Seattle Council. Well done. Now you will reap the rewards of your actions. The decision followed demands from some in the community who wanted to reimagine policing. I haven't said reimagine or rethink for a while, have I? No, it's just kind of out of vogue. They wanted to reimagine policing in the city via a smaller police force. Why? You want to put in some social workers in there? All right, I will watch that train wreck happen. Why not? Sign me up. Do the pay-per-view for me, right? I'll pay my $49.99 and watch that pay-per-view go down. That's crazy. Diaz said 1,400 is the ideal number of officers to patrol the growing city, which includes police trainees. According to exit interviews by officers who left the force, many of them cited issues with the city leaders, and a lack of trust with the community. The hatred directed at Seattle Police Department by our city leaders, activists, and the citizens of Seattle is unwarranted and unacceptable, wrote one officer after having served for over 20 years. The city of Seattle no longer deserves my law enforcement services. Good. They don't. Go somewhere where they are well received. Time for me to retire and escape this failing city. Diaz said his department is at a true crossroads with growing scrutiny around policing in a city that has a growing gun violence issue and homelessness issue, which brings its own, level of violence, and an opioid issue. Do I need to go on? I mean, you need more cops, not less. Last year, Seattle police reported 50 homicidal deaths, a 26-year high. Ignore that stat. It's not that. It's not that many people. That's a lot of people. 50 homicides? We got to do better in our society, Diaz said. We've got to find ways to solve this issue. And I really do think there is a great impact when I don't have as many officers to respond to those types of situations. All right. And who gets hurt the most in all of this? What communities get hurt the most in all of this? Do I even need to say it? Yeah, BIPOC communities, right? Look at the stats. It's not that hard to figure out. So we defunded because on Friday, Seattle Police Department launched a new jobs website to lure qualified candidates. Good luck with that. I have a young gentleman that I know, good friends with my oldest son, Kieran. And he pursued becoming a Seattle police officer. And I texted with him the other day. He actually became an appraiser, not for me, but for another company. And he's a great appraiser. He's 28 and just pumps out some volume, goes to all kinds of crazy places that other people wouldn't go. And he just kind of knuckles down and does his thing and puts the work out. And he's getting paid some pretty good money, let's be honest. And so I texted him and said, hey, how glad are you that you didn't become a cop, especially in Seattle? It was super, super competitive there for a while. When those kids got out of college, 28, so maybe 6 years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, he was trying to get onto a department somewhere. It was brutal. It was really, really hard. And he's a college graduate and a smart kid, and I'm sure he tested well and all that crazy stuff, and he's physically very fit. So there was no reason he couldn't become a cop, but it was competitive. Now they're launching new job websites to lure qualified candidates. I say, good luck with that. Let's see, where are you going to apply to? Well, I'm not going to apply to Portland, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Seattle. San Francisco. The list just goes on. Spokane. I could just keep going, right? I could just keep randomly, naming off these cities with leadership that doesn't appreciate a safe city, right? So Diaz said they're not providing hiring bonuses currently, but they probably should because it's going to take a wad of cash to bring in police officers, right? Or are there enough people out there that are just really good-hearted and say, even though the city doesn't want my services, and I know people are going to hate me, and there's a good chance I could get hurt with these ridiculous, peaceful protests going on that don't turn out so peaceful when a frozen water bottle or can of soup is thrown at my head. Are you going to have a lot of people sign up for that? Yep, I want to make a difference. I really want to get in there and make a difference. Seattle, that's for me. Well, there's going to be a few of those people, and they're called crazy. But I just don't see a lot of people going, yeah, I'm going to make a difference and I'm going to become a Seattle police officer. Said nobody, I don't think, right? If I'm wrong, I don't know. You'd have to really kind of you need to have your head checked if you want to become a cop in Seattle or one of these cities. Seriously. Because you could die. He said he wants candidates who recognize the challenges facing policing and officers who provide the service. We have a challenge in our world right now, and this is the opportune time to be part of that challenge and really live a model of excellence. Okay, that is what Interim Chief Diaz has to say politically. He's got to come out with what I find in most of these press releases. He's got to say some fluffy good stuff that has, the positive spin. Hey, this is where we need to head. And he is right. But the stuff that I focus on is the first part, which is we don't have enough cops to keep our city streets safe. And that's the part where I'm like, the other fluffy stuff, it is true, but, the hard reality, and that's what I focus on here in the Seattle Real Estate Podcast, is not where, all right, I want to talk about reimagining and rethinking, this convoluted deal over here. Let's talk about what's going on right now. Got 1,080 police officers and you got rising levels of crime. How's that going to work out this summer? I'm going to throw out, an idea and say, not well. So this is one of those things, this is just going to keep on going. And there's going to be a handful of us where we don't want to say, I told you so, because I've already said it. How many different times do you have to? This isn't hard stuff to figure out, folks. I mean, it's really not. But apparently others think differently. And, we got to defund the police department. We need more social workers in there to take those 911 calls, And don't get me wrong. I'm not against social workers, but when the bad man comes, I want a cop that can defend himself and others. Say a cop who can defend themselves against a person with a knife, for instance, that's going to take out another person. That's their job. That is the epitome of what a cop does, is protect innocent people from the bad man or bad girl, bad woman, whatever the case may be. Right? I mean, am I missing something here? I know I'm a real estate dude and I'm not good at a lot of things, but I'm, kind of good at logic there a little bit. And that's one of those things to me. It's like one of the reasons I started, covering these subjects in this podcast, because I was watching these stories going, what? Huh? How does this fit into reasonable? There is no reasonable narrative going on here at all. And I'd have to, search for these other channels to kind of figure out, okay, good Lord, it's not just me. There are other people out there, and there's people like you who are like, okay, this stuff that I'm seeing makes no sense at all. And this is, this is our public safety at stake here. And I think a lot of people are like, you're doing a lot of fear mongering about this. Okay, well, that's fine. But, let's see how it ends up, because guaranteed, I'm on the right end of these statistics as far as public safety goes, right? I mean, these numbers, you get down to 800 cops. Are you going to go, you know what? It's working out pretty good. I think things are going well. Crime levels have dropped because those out doing the criming, they know that there aren't enough police officers. So they're kind of leveling the field by, doing less criming. Okay. You do the criming on Tuesday. I'll take Thursday. And you guys over there, you guys limit it to Saturday. Saturdays are for the boys. You guys go ham on Saturday, right? No. that's not how this goes. All right, I'm going to read an email here from somebody that I trust, former police officer. And if I pause on this, it's because I'm figuring out how to get you the information, but keep this as anonymous as possible. So there is no way that, people who send me this stuff can be identified, because Lord knows there's enough nut jobs out there, right? So I know of many people who listen to your podcasts, very common sense in your viewpoint. Thank you. Some would say that's true. Others would say not true. You're a nut job yourself. Okay, whatever it is. But if you're watching, you're probably thinking, well, let's just see what the real estate guy has to say. I'm really glad I'm retired from police work. The timing was coincidental. We'd been kind of going back and forth on retirement. For the last several years, I knew 2020 would be my time to hang it up. I would have met the age and time and service requirement. In our agency, minimum retirement is 50 years old with 25 years of service, or age 55 with any amount of years in service. I planned my exit accordingly, and that I burnt 9 weeks of accrued vacation hours before I officially retired last summer. So I only experienced the first week of the George Floyd protests, which was May 28th to June 4th. I worked for a long time in my district patrol area, so I built many, many years. I can guarantee you that. I'm not going to read the number because then that identifies. So I built relationships with many people in the community in my district. I feel that they were supportive of police because of my conversations with them at community meetings, at businesses, and responding to various calls. I'm not sure what the disconnect is between the people's opinions of police and the reality. I surmise part of the problem is that officers that don't spend the time communicating and explaining what to do, what we can do, and what we can't do. So as a cop, I recognize that we don't always do a good job of explaining our actions. I think part of that has been the low manpower. Don't have enough cops. Number one, where we respond to a call, clean it up as best we can, and then move on to the next one. So, it's this rotating basis. If you don't have enough people and you're hustling to get to that next call, what are you going to do? You're going to cut whatever corners you have to kind of keep trying to cover the calls as they come in. We see the calls holding on our computers, and the dispatcher seems to frequently broadcast priority calls holding with no one to go or asking if someone can clear to go to the priority call. They're just working on priority calls, right? That's what we just read in Adrian Diaz, Interim Chief Adrian Diaz. One problem with the public's opinion of police is that most have never had police contact. Not me. I've had plenty. It wasn't good. But you know what? You know why that was? Because I was breaking the law. Okay? Not in a major way. Isn't that how everybody justifies their actions? It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. I was breaking the law. That's why you get arrested. Simple as that. And if you can't figure that one out, you're not a reasonable human being. Most people have never had police contact other than maybe receiving a traffic ticket. I've had plenty of those, which leaves a negative feeling about police. The public seem to paint all police nationwide with one broad stroke of the brush. They don't seem to realize that there are local differences even within a metro area. Even within a metro area in different precincts, there are some pretty major differences, right? Different agencies may have different policies, different training standards or requirements beyond the state basic academy. There are regional differences and there are nationwide differences of different police agencies. Laws can vary state by state also. The police leadership and training officers go to conferences nationwide to try to determine best practices and implement the best practices. Portland has been under a federal Department of Justice settlement agreement for about the last 7 years, which is a lesser oversight than Seattle Police Department being under a Department of Justice decree, and that has been since 2011, I believe. Department of Justice has a monitor that we, Portland Police Bureau, had to meet certain requirements in the settlement agreement, just like Seattle Police Department has to meet Department of requirements for their decree. These requirements are supervised by a federal judge. I've done a bunch of podcasts on Seattle's, and what the federal judge said. Federal judge actually chastised the Seattle City Council because they were basically making the Seattle Police Department out of compliance. Before COVID protests, Portland Police Bureau was deemed in substantial compliance During the protests and the police actions that were taken during protests, Portland Police Bureau was found to be out of compliance. Shocking. They don't have enough cops and they're responding to some ridiculous stuff. They're spread too thin. And yet the news story is Portland Police Department out of compliance. They're horrible people. They can't do their job. What's going on? You know what I mean? The supervisors were just plain overwhelmed with the amount of after actions that needed to be completed. They couldn't get to all the stuff. They're overworked, undermanned, can't get to the tasks that they need to. Just can't do it. So when the reformers say they want Portland Police Bureau to do this, to do that, I read the demands and think, we already do that. These reformist demands, there were already conditions sent forth by the Department of Justice settlement. These are already, they're outlined. With this said, I don't think the average citizen understands, and that's why I'm reading this. I don't think the average citizen understands that the Portland Police Bureau and probably Seattle Police Department are some of the more progressive agencies around, award-winning during the Obama administration, right? Award-winning. I think the average citizen just buys into the media of what's going on or not going on with incidents in other parts of the country and think that all police basically believe the same way. With the defunding and further cuts in budget and the continuing retirements and resignations, I think the Portland Police Bureau will fall below 800 officers by June. Where are they at now? Are they, I think they are less than Seattle. I should have grabbed that number, but I didn't. Yeah, it's minimal for a city that size, bottom line, right? Actually, I've got that here. You know what? We're not going to worry about it. It's bad. They're going to have way less cops than they need to. And Portland's been on that train for a while, right? Even if Portland Police Bureau is able to hire, and I don't know who would apply to be an officer at the Portland Police Bureau. This is one cop saying, hey, I retired because, yeah, it was my time and I was done. Don't want to deal with this anymore. And he's saying, I don't know who would apply to be an officer at Portland Police Bureau. Agreed. I mean, and I'm not a cop. I've just been around a tiny fraction of the, activity that would, just horrible. In the years past, Portland Police Bureau was the premier agency in Oregon to work for, just like Seattle Police Department was, right? Officers from smaller agencies would get a start in their small agency and apply to Portland Police Bureau for more pay, better opportunities, or assignments because it's a bigger metro department. There's more opportunity, right? Not now. You've got opportunity to respond to crime, but Over the last year, it was unheard of where officers not eligible for retirement would bail out of Portland Police Bureau and go to smaller agencies for less pay and not as much opportunity to do specialized assignments. Unheard of. If you got the option, you take it, you go. A final word. There's a lot of people that set the tone for the city. Politicians set the tone. A lot of the lack of support lie with the city mayor and the city council. The district attorney is the fourth one, who also sets a tone when he makes policy regarding who his office will prosecute or not. Because it doesn't matter if you have all the cops in the world arresting these folks. If you don't get them off the streets, even for a little bit, or even, some kind of, you got to have some kind of disciplinary action. You got to have some kind of, you got to have something to enforce the law. And right now in Seattle and Portland, you're just not. You committed a crime. It's okay. So there has to be consequences for actions, right? I talk about disciplining your kids. You got to have something. Otherwise, they're not going to listen to you. Those out doing the criming know that there's virtually no repercussions for their actions of criming. So why wouldn't they do it? That's what's going on. That's why you got crime increasing, right? Okay, so where are we at here? And the courts and the judges make decisions that affect how police are to respond. If the cops arrest a ton of people for breaking the law and our district attorneys and our judges don't do anything, guess what? Word gets out. Believe it or not, word gets out. Those doing the criming, hey, I got a hall pass here. Just going to go do my thing. And that's what's going on. I don't have any answers either. I'm just afraid that it's going to be another bad year that the fringe element are going to use to create mayhem in Portland. That's already happening, right? Mayor Ted, though. Mayor Ted has done 180 degrees and he is on the bandwagon for justice against those destroying his city. Whereas last summer, it was the summer of love and they were taking selfies with the protesters in the parks and you guys go. And now all of a sudden we're like, oh, no. Oh. I feel bad for my fellow officers still holding the line. Yeah, no kidding. Bad spot to be in. And I've talked with a number of cops that are like, yeah, if I could get out, I would. But I've got, I got an ex-wife that's super expensive. Shocking, I know. I got a kid in college. All right. Need to get that kid through school. Maybe then you can transfer and go somewhere and get a little less pay because college is expensive. I've got, whatever. I'm so close to retirement. I just want to finish out here. And a lot of these cops, they love their cities. They just don't like the political leadership and the position that they're put in. So that's why they're leaving, even though they're leaving. They came to work in a city that they really liked. And now they're kind of in this position where they're like, yeah, not so much. Not so much. And I can't really blame them. I mean, if you ever get a chance to go to a protest, go to a protest. See what that interaction is like between the police when the police come out. See what that interaction is like. It's some nasty stuff. There's some nasty human beings saying some nasty stuff that if you had little kids around, you would immediately clap their ears. Oh, little Johnny or Susie, you don't want to hear that. Because if that gets in your head down the road, you're not going to be a good person. I'm not saying all protesters are like that, but the ones who engage with the cops in a very confrontational style, they tend to say things that, are not real supportive of Back the Blue. Let's just put it that way. All right. That is it for me on this one, but this story guaranteed will be continued. To be continued, because there's no way that, there's no way this is late April. There is no way in the next few months before summer hits and good weather and the natives get restless. There is no way that things get better before they get worse. No way. And I know you guys know that too. I mean, you just know that the numbers are there. And if you're a reasonable human being, you look at these numbers and go, oh yeah, this isn't going to be great. It's not going to be great. You're going to have more and more news stories that are, heartbreaking and shocking, and innocent people they're going to have bad things happen to them. And guess what the police are going to be able to do? Not a lot, because they're off to the next call. And then there's going to be an uprising of where is our police support? And everybody over here in this camp is going to be, well, where do you think it is? You knucklehead. That's what I'm going to leave you with. You knucklehead. Not to you, to them over there, those guys. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks for being part of the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. I've got other topics I got to cover here. Probably not as exciting as this one, but this is one of the major storylines that I think this summer is going to really kind of come to fruition, because you're going to have some stuff hit the fan, and it's not going to be all rainbows and butterflies. I'll cover it for you right here on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Thanks for being part. I'll catch up with you guys soon. Take care. We'll see you then. Bye. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know when our next video is out.